All right. So first of all, thank you all for taking the time to join us on this first session of Design Thinking and Ghana Hub's monthly meetup. So we do this monthly meetup. We have these sessions once in a month where we look at how we can use design thinking. We learn about design thinking, and we also explore how we can use the knowledge that we get from these sessions in the businesses that we run, the startups, and any other ventures that we get ourselves into. So we would start right now. I'll first like to do some introductions. Start with me. My name is Kelvin Kwate. Turn my camera on. All right, so my name is Kelvin Kwate. I would be one of your facilitators for today. I'm here with Brian. So my name is Kelvin, as I mentioned. I work at IC. I'm an analyst at IC Asset Managers. And I'm here with Brian. Brian, if you can kindly do a little intro, and then we can start with today's session.
Yes, certainly. I hope everyone can hear me. Yes, I believe you can. So my name is Brian. I will be co-facilitating with Kelvin. I was just setting up. I've been with Design Thinking Ghana Hub for like 2 or 3 years now. I have a background in entrepreneurship and portfolio management, and just largely in leading programs for startups and founders. So it's exciting to bring all that knowledge and to use it in this session. So looking forward to having a very informative session with you all. Kelvin, back to you.
All right, thank you very much. So at Design Thinking Ghana, what we do is to look at how we can apply design thinking principles and techniques and strategies to solve business problems. So one of the things that in fact, if you look at today's session, we are looking at how we can use design thinking to design our lives. Usually, most of the sessions that we have, and that's design thinking sessions that we have, we use companies as case studies, and we look at how we can use those tools to be able to help these businesses become much better. But today, our focus is how we can use the design thinking principles, translate them into our life, and be able to help us design the kind of life that you would want. So I would share my screen, and then we can start with today's session. Brian, is my slides moving? Just want to confirm.
Yeah, yes, we can see your screen.
All right. So as I mentioned, this session is designing your life, and I'm here with Brian. We are taking some lessons and some tools from the book Designing Your Life by Burnett and Dave Evans' book, that's Designing Your Life. So we picked some nuggets from that book, and we added our design thinking tools to help you give you those tools to design the life that you want. In our presentation, this is how it will be structured. We'll start by looking at dysfunctional beliefs, what we've grown up to learn about how you're supposed to design your life. More of an orthodox traditional way of how you should choose a certain career that you want to choose or pursue a certain life that you want to pursue. Then we'll look at design thinking. Then we'll look at life design and the principles of life design. Thirdly, we'll look at assessing your life. We believe that before you design the kind of life that you want in the future, it's important to assess and define where you are. By knowing where you are and being aware of that, then you can be able to design the kind of life that you want going forward. So, yes, and then the last part, we will look at how you can use design thinking frameworks to help you design the kind of life that you want. So this is the process, or this is the outline I will be looking at. Dysfunctional beliefs, life design, design itself, assessing your life, and lastly, designing your life framework. Now, I would start by taking the dysfunctional beliefs. I also speak about design thinking and life design. Brian will come in to talk about how you can assess your life to know where you are. And then lastly, I'll come in to talk about how you can use the design thinking, the life design framework to design the kind of life that you want. Now we're starting with the first session. So dysfunctional beliefs. Now, in growing up, the first question that we ask ourselves, or we are asked when we are young, is, what do you want to be when you grow up? And that's a question that we are supposed to answer at a very young age, even with limited knowledge of how the world works. Apologies, I had a little challenge with my internet. But then that's a question that we are asked. What do you want to be when you grow up? and we have to answer that question. And from there, we embark on this journey where we are looking around, listening to people, to be able to decide the kind of life that we want. Now, we've picked up 3 dysfunctional beliefs that we are met with as we are growing up and deciding the kind of career or life that we want to pursue. Number 1, your degree determines your career. So for someone on this call, you probably pursued or taken a degree in a university, say business administration, and then probably even done a master's on it. And you are probably thinking that the kind of career that I want has to fall in line with the degree that I took at the university. We are letting you know that it doesn't work that way. In fact, the reframed version of it is that 3/4 of all university graduates don't end up working in a career related to their majors. So then with this knowledge, you understand that by even taking a degree in a university, in a certain field, you can still design a type of life that is not within that line. Second dysfunctional belief: if you are successful, you'll be happy. So most of us will probably go through our career, we get promoted, we do very well, start businesses, but may not necessarily be happy about it. Now, a reframed version of it is true happiness comes from designing a life that works for you. So in design thinking, we like to reframe problems so that we can look at it in different perspectives. That's why we are looking at it in this format. Then the last one is too late. For someone joining the call, you may be thinking, or joining the meeting, you may be thinking, it's too late. I've been pursuing this career for a very long time. I've gone for the first degree, second degree, got promoted, and I've done very well. I think it's too late for me to design the kind of life that I want to live. But then we are here to let you know that there are some tools that you can use to be able to help you design the kind of life that you want going forward, regardless of the degree that you took in university, regardless of where you are in your career, and regardless of how long you've been in a certain industry, you can be able to design the kind of life that you really want. Now, let's look at what life design is. But before then, let's look at design thinking. As I mentioned, in life design, we are using the principles and the techniques in design thinking to design the kind of life that we want. In design thinking, it is a human-centered approach to innovation that draws from designers to integrate the needs of people, the possibilities of technology, and the requirements of business for success. What design thinking does is it puts the needs of whatever business you are running at the center of the equation, and then looks at how you can be able to meet those needs using technology and using your business. That's what design thinking is. Puts the business puts the user or the consumer at the heart of the business. But with life design, you put you at the center of the business. You put you at the center of the equation, and then you look at how you can use those tools to be able to help you meet your needs in terms of the career that you want. So in design thinking, it's the human, that's the consumers of the business. But in life design, it is you that you are designing your life. You put you at a context and be able to understand yourself, use those tools that we use in design thinking to help you design the kind of life that you want. So life design basically looks at harnessing design thinking methods to tackle key questions and major decisions surrounding key facets of a person's life, including education, career, and overall ambition and purpose. So that, as I mentioned, as I discussed, you putting you at the center of it and using the tools that we use in design thinking to help you design the kind of life that you want. Now, there are various principles under life design, and it's important that we have this as at the back of our mind because this forms the foundation of life design. Number 1 is curiosity. If you are going to apply life design, you have to be curious, to ask questions, to be open to ideas. Number 2, reframing. You may encounter a number of things. Example, my degree has to determine my career. But when you reframe it and you understand the context in which this quote comes in, you understand that you do not necessarily have to pursue the kind of career that a career that is related to the degree that you took in university. Number 3, radical collaboration. So as you are pursuing life design, at some point, you may need to collaborate with people, talk to people, get feedback on yourself to be able to understand what paths you need to take, to be able to, as I mentioned, design the kind of life that you want. The 4th principle is bias for action. In design thinking, we stress a lot on prototyping. If you are designing something that has never been used before, and you want to see how successful it's going to be, we stress a lot on prototyping. Build that prototype, test it out, and then get some feedback to make it much better. The same with life design. Let me give you an example. If you are thinking of getting into medicine, or probably you are here and you are trying to pivot to that career, with life design, instead of you going all out to take a full degree at the university and continuing to take a master's degree and then becoming a doctor, we would say, if you are thinking about it, why don't you prototype it? Here, you can either take some online courses related, test these ideas and see how feasible they are before you go all out. And last principle is awareness, being able to understand where you are and the people and the things that interact, and then design the kind of life that you want to have. We are about to get into the framework of designing the kind of life that you want, but it's important for us to assess our life and know where we are before we go into designing the kind of life that we want. And to be able to assess our life, Brian will come in to take us through the journey map and how we can use that to be able to know where we are before we can design, we can apply other tools to where we want to go to. So Brian, over to you on assessing your life. Brian, you're on mute.
Yeah, my bad. I was saying thanks, Kelvin. So right now and it's glad to see there are a lot of people on the call. Right now, we are going to look at how to assess your life, right? And oftentimes we feel like the key might be in the future, but with design thinking and with so many of the tools we look at, what we realize is that more often than not, usually your experiences in the past and the things we've done have contributed towards what provides purpose in our lives. And to move forward, we can find gems in the past that can help give us direction. And so I am now going to share screen and I'm going to walk you through some of the tools that can be used when it comes to how you can reflect, refer, and use that to inform how you design your life. So just give me a second to share screen. I hope everyone can see my screen.
Yeah, your screen is visible.
Awesome. Great. So what we are going to use is the framework of connecting the dots. So we are using a book, but we did want to bring in further content and also bring in examples that some of you would already be familiar with. So here, looking at connecting the dots, Steve Jobs has a really popular speech where he talks about his journey in creating Apple and his career in general, and how so many moments that people would have considered failures and he even found uncertain ended up being the keys to the innovations that he unlocked. So we're going to start with a really interesting video, just so we can get a practical example of how connecting the dots can lead to a more informative and more fulfilling future. So I'm just going to play it now.
Today, I want to tell you 3 stories from my life. That's it. No big deal. Just 3 stories. The first story is about connecting the dots. I dropped out of Reed College after the first 6 months, but then stayed around as a drop-in for another 18 months or so before I really quit. So why'd I drop out? It started before I was born. My biological mother was a young, unwed graduate student, and she decided to put me up for adoption. She felt very strongly that I should be adopted by college graduates, so everything was all set for me to be adopted at birth by a lawyer and his wife. My biological mother found out later that my mother had never graduated from college and that my father had never graduated from high school. She refused to sign the final adoption papers. She only relented a few months later when my parents promised that I would go to college. This was the start in my life. And 17 years later, I did go to college. And all of my working class parents' savings were being spent on my college tuition. After 6 months, I couldn't see the value in it. I had no idea what I wanted to do with my life and no idea how college was going to help me figure it out. So I decided to drop out and trust that it would all work out okay. It was pretty scary at the time, but looking back, it was one of the best decisions I ever made. The minute I dropped out, I could stop taking the required classes that didn't interest me and begin dropping in on the ones that looked far more interesting. It wasn't all romantic. I didn't have a dorm room, so I slept on the floor in friends' rooms. I returned Coke bottles for the 5-cent deposits to buy food with. And I would walk the 7 miles across town every Sunday night to get one good meal a week at the Hare Krishna temple. And much of what I stumbled into by following my curiosity and intuition turned out to be priceless later on. You can't connect the dots looking forward. You can only connect them looking backwards. So you have to trust that the dots will somehow connect in your future. You have to trust in something, your gut, destiny, life, karma, whatever, because believing that the dots will connect down the road will give you the confidence to follow your heart, even when it leads you off the well-worn path, and that will make all the difference. My second story is about love and loss. I was lucky. I found what I loved to do early in life. Woz and I started Apple in my parents' garage when I was 20. We worked hard, and in 10 years, Apple had grown from just the two of us in a garage into a $2 billion company with over 4,000 employees. We just released our finest creation, the Macintosh, a year earlier, and I just turned 30. And then I got fired. And so at 30, I was out, and very publicly out. What had been the focus of my entire adult life was gone, and it was devastating. I really didn't know what to do for a few months. I was a very public failure, and I even thought about running away from the valley. But something slowly began to dawn on me. I still loved what I did. The turn of events at Apple had not changed that one bit. I'd been rejected, but I was still in love. And so I decided to start over. I didn't see it then, but it turned out that getting fired from Apple was the best thing that could have ever happened to me. The heaviness of being successful was replaced by the lightness of being a beginner again, less sure about everything. It freed me to enter one of the most creative periods of my life. During the next 5 years, I started a company named Next, another company named Pixar, and fell in love with an amazing woman who would become my wife. Pixar went on to create the world's first computer animated feature film, Toy Story, and is now the most successful animation studio in the world. Apple bought Next, and I returned to Apple, and the technology we developed at Next is at the heart of Apple's current renaissance. I'm pretty sure none of this would have happened if I hadn't been fired from Apple. It was awful tasting medicine, but I guess the patient needed it. Sometimes life's going to hit you in the head with a brick. Don't lose faith. I'm convinced that the only thing that kept me going was that I loved what I did. You've got to find what you love, and that is as true for work as it is for your lovers. Your work is going to fill a large part of your life, and the only way to be truly satisfied is to do what you believe is great work. And the only way to do great work is to love what you do. If you haven't found it yet, keep looking and don't settle. As with all matters of the heart, you'll know when you find it. And like any great relationship, it just gets better and better as the years roll on. So keep looking, don't settle. If you live each day as if it was your last, someday you'll most certainly be right. For the past 33 years, I've looked in the mirror every morning and asked myself, if today were the last day of my life, would I want to do what I am about to do today?
Awesome. So I hope that was pretty inspiring. I see Amisha Dai dropped a comment. I had been rejected, but I was still in love. And so I'm happy that the video came across well. And so I'm sure we're all quite familiar with Apple. Some people are probably joining this call on a Macintosh or even an iPhone right now. And the whole point is that, you know, you see extremely successful people who are considered some of the greatest innovators, such as Steve, and you wonder how come they got there, right? And you find out that they had all these tough beginnings, but then due to the faith and being able to just understand that there was a larger purpose to what they were doing was so meaningful in defining their journey and making everything they did a lot more intentional. So just like Kelvin was saying earlier, when it comes to bias, it's never too late to start again. It doesn't matter if you're 20, in your 30s, in your 40s. Once you do give yourself a chance to infer and look further at what actually drives your passion, it gives you a chance to start that journey. And those are the tools we'll come to look at. So I've had to do a personal reflection for the sake of this case, not that I wanted to, but I guess I'm going to be sharing more of how I use this tool so that for any of you who want to do this exercise for yourself, currently I'm designing my own life and I'm really happy about it. I just started later last year. I hope that this inspires you to know the steps to be able to do the same. So we start with self-examination. That's when you're looking back at your life, your career journey so far, and asking yourself how fulfilling it has been and what have been the critical moments along the journey. So I have this example for myself, and I graduated college just like 4 or 5 or so years ago, right? So for me, I'm looking back at my college experiences, and I'm also looking back at my work experiences. And I'm not just trying to identify everything I thought was great, I'm just trying to identify everything I thought was momentous. So it has to be the same thing for you. Anything you feel like was a significant mark in your life is what you're trying to track over here. So I remember for me in my first year, starting a fast food business, it didn't last long. In reality, we were just doing like kebabs and a few things, but it was very exciting just to go through the whole process, bringing vendors on campus, being able to sell in that whole experience. That led to more things in the business space, like leading the business club, taking part in international business competitions, pursuing an entrepreneurship capstone, right? And eventually finding design thinking and finding better ways to solve problems and innovate. But beyond just that, I also did a lot in public speaking. So when it comes to being part of the debate club, MUN, things that also have to do with impact, those were things that really stood out. And beyond that, because it's also college, there was some learning. So different courses like coding, I remember, finance, I remember. And again, I'm not saying those are my favorite courses, but they were just things that stood out about the experience. So with this reflection, it's just about putting all those things down as a point of reference. And then when it comes to my work life, I remember doing my NSS at Shesi and the Foundations of Design Entrepreneurship course. It was really engaging and exciting, being able to teach and share knowledge around entrepreneurship with others. Also doing an early internship around finance and management, having a business development role really early after college. So again, you're seeing some of the past experiences from college, and from this exercise, I was actually able to identify how these past experiences started sifting into some of my career choices. And then I went to Impact of Accra, where I started taking more management roles and realizing and engaging further with the entrepreneurship ecosystem, learning about investors, how to lead programs, how to raise funding, how to build a business. And that led to doing things like coaching with West Africa, doing further facilitation for Design Thinking Ghana Hub, and being able to apply that knowledge, and leading programs like Deep Dive Africa, where you're raising hundreds, millions of euros for companies across Ghana, Nigeria, Kenya, and Rwanda. So these were all those experiences. But beyond that, it wasn't just about all the learning and the business stuff. I did some storytelling, a bit of spoken word, and all those fun activities were also important points to note. And so when I was doing that reflection, and when you are, it's important to note all those things. And then from there, you can refer. So by referring, now what you're going to do is you have to identify what were the celebratory and the lackluster periods in your journey. Identify what your proudest accomplishments were and what were the least joyous moments and what were the reasons for this. So for me, I use a simple plus system or a star system, where I'm taking that same list I already have, and what you're doing is just applying a star or a plus on everything that was extremely positive for you. So starting that little small business at first was exciting for me, so I started. Leading the business club, so I started. The international programs, the experience, meeting new people was very exciting, I started. The entrepreneurship capstone, design thinking, publicly speaking, and being the class speaker for my year group. Out of all these experiences, those really stood out. So I started them because I knew that those are things that met my passion and sustained my happiness while I was doing it. And then in my work life, you have things around teaching with FDE, around leading business programs, engaging with the entrepreneurship ecosystem, leading incubators and portfolio management, and just a lot of things to, again, do with entrepreneurship, building companies, impact, and also working in these more dynamic spaces. So from doing all this, I was able to decipher between all the things I had done and the things that were more exciting to me. So now I have to move on to revealing. That's where we're going to use the journey map tool, and we're trying to map out the high and low points identified in our journey so far, or in our careers. This would allow you to further look into the causalities that define those moments. So now we're trying to understand, okay, these things were really great for some reason. I was really passionate about them, but what was the reason for this and what are those similarities? And that's when you come to the journey map. So as you can see, I've done a journey map here. There's a simple format to a journey map. You're trying to look at your experiences. For me, when I'm looking at my career, before, during, and after. And so you're plotting out the journey map in a linear manner, and you're trying to identify what were the most exciting points of this. And that's what you can see here, the positives on the upper line with the starry-eyed emoji. What were the moments that were more neutral, you were kind of indifferent about, and those fall in the middle? And then what were the moments that you weren't as excited about, things that can be improved or things you don't fully have the passion for? So by doing this, it's now making it easier for me to identify what really excites me, what I'm not too certain about, and what I know is not the best use of my time or the best use of my interest. Like Steve Jobs said, if I'm waking up every day to do this, do I feel fulfilled doing this? And so from mapping out the journey map, I've taken all those points we just looked at and I've plotted them across. And then what become the highlights are, again, starting that food business, that business club, the international competitions, the capstone, design thinking, public speaking. But then I realized that although I really love art and maybe acting a bit, dancing a bit, and maybe singing, even though I have a terrible voice, it's things in the middle. It's just fun stuff, but not really career stuff for me. And coding is great. I mean, I'm currently working with a team to build an app, but I don't think I'm primarily the person who codes, even if I can help with a wireframe or a prototype. Debate is also good in MUN as well, but maybe it's a bit too political for me. And finance, I like to count money, but yeah, that's as far as it goes. So it's about also realizing these things for yourself. And for me, this was very, very eye-opening to see. And then I go from my college life and now I'm now looking at my work life. And with the work life, I'm now seeing that the things that really stood out were things around the programs I did with startups, around entrepreneurship, around creating impact, with Impact Hub Accra, with DTGH, where I got to work with different companies and see their growth and innovation processes, with programs like AIX, where I get to help young students to understand how they can be innovative, right? And then projects around finance and things where I wasn't necessarily able to create as much impact, or the focus didn't align enough with ecosystems that were startup oriented or unconventional enough, weren't exciting for me. So through this journey map, I'm able to identify my star moments and things that give me passion, what's neutral and what I'm not too excited about. And the best part of this is from doing this, I'm able to draw themes. So if you go to the right of the journey map where we have the really strong arm, you can see that there are themes there that are pulled from the experiences. So culture was a big part. If I'm referencing a ShareC, DTGH, Impact Hub Accra, all of them have a really open culture, really friendly people, exciting people that are looking to make a change, trying to do something that will be long lasting or question the status quo in a meaningful way. So that culture matters a lot wherever I want to find myself. Entrepreneurship, being able to start something, be risky, know that this would be life-changing, this will be worth it, whether it works out or not. Even if I'm having a sleepless night, I'm having a sleepless night because I'm being concerned about how great what I'm doing is. Being able to be part of the startup ecosystem. Am I talking to other founders, talking to investors, talking to people trying to build who've never done it before, but just have faith in what you're doing? Being able to lead. Am I in a position where I can share with people, help people grow, where I can and also make impact in my life, in their lives as well? A place that's unconventional, going to move something, going to cause something to be different for people in another generation. And finally, is what I'm doing going to inspire others? So all these themes you see over here were pulled for me being able to look at my journey. And these were things that I knew definitely had to be part of my future if I wanted it to be fulfilling. So moving on, from that journey map, I come back to the board we're already working on. As you can see, it's gone from just being a board where we listed our experiences to where we start our most exciting parts of our journey and identified what were the reasons that made those things very exciting. And from there, we come to what I'm doing today. So more recently, I decided to leave a lot of the corporate work and focus more on building a company, starting a business, and doing something I felt was quite unconventional, but could make a lot of lives easier, create a lot of impact, and create a lot of change. This has been a very big decision, had to make some sacrifices and leave exciting opportunities, but I'm very confident that this is what's going to give me fulfillment, and this is what I want to wake up to do. And so I won't talk a lot about the company, but these are also just the exciting moments for me. Again, like I said, being part of a team, being able to engage in the ecosystem, take part in programs that mean so much to me, and that I know I'm talking to people equally trying to make a change. And that has been the fulfillment. And that's the path I want to keep going on. So that's how I'm designing my life, applying these tools of referring, reflecting, and revealing. And now I'm going to end off with a quote from Steve Jobs and then pass it back to Kelvin. You can't connect the dots looking forward. You can only connect them looking backward. So you have to trust that the dots will somehow connect in your future. So I hope this has helped us understand the reason for connecting our dots and how it can lead to us building greater things. So Kelvin, over to you.
Brian, thank you very much. By looking back, then we can be able to design the kind of future that we want. So the part about reflection is very, very important. And using the journey map gives us that tool to look back at what we've been doing and then create these teams that help us to design a life going forward. Now, we've looked at how we can use the journey map to be able to help us understand what we've been doing from the past, more retrospective. But then in looking into the future, there are some tools that can help us to be able to design our life going forward. One of them is called the wayfinding. Now, the wayfinding is an ancient tool of figuring out where you are going when you don't know your destination. And I believe a lot of us, or for some of us on the call, we are still figuring it out, trying to understand how, or trying to find out what life that we want to live or build the kind of life that we want to live. So what a wayfinding does is, it's an activity that you do. You set a time frame for yourself, if it's 2 weeks or a month. And what you do is you highlight or you write down key activities that you perform within that time period, whether it's 2 weeks or a month. And then you gauge them in terms of engagement and then energy. Okay, so engagement basically looks at how engaged you were, interested you were in the activity that you were performing. And then you look at energy. Was the energy negative? Was it positive? Now, before I go into to discuss what we have here in terms of the activities that we listed here, I'll also let you know that you can use the wayfinding technique in isolation, or can use it in conjunction with the journey map. So whilst the journey map helps you to look at the past and fish out key themes that you performed in the past, you can put them on the wayfinding template and then find out how engaged or what the energy was. And then you can use that to determine the kind of life that you want. That will give you some insight into, oh, these are the things that really interest me. And then you can start pursuing them going forward. Alternatively, you can use the wayfinding going into the future, which I mentioned. You set a time frame for yourself, whether it's 2 weeks or a month, going into the future, and then you list key activities that you perform. So on this slide here, these are some activities that I performed over the past week as I was trying to fill out this wayfinding structure. One of them is discussing strategic ideas. I think that's something that really interests me. The engagement is high. Energy is also very high, very positive. Planning my finances. These are activities that you would also perform. And then you see that the engagement level and energy level, just as you see attending online classes and running errands. Now, what this would tell you, or what this exercise will tell you, is trying to be more reflective and know what things that really engage you and things that you find you put a lot of energy in. Because most of the times when we are doing these activities, we are not consciously looking at how we're performing in them. But then if we become conscious and use a tool like wayfinding, then we can write those key activities down and judge whether on the engagement and energy level where we fall. And this can give us insight into things that we can pursue. So if, let's say, I play music at home and I see that the engagement level is really high, a lot of people are receptive to the idea, I like what I'm doing, and the energy is that there is also there, then something that I may want to look at or pursue. So it's more futuristic. Now, once you track the activities, you need to get insights. Okay, and we use the AEIOU tool to be able to help us get insights from these activities that you've been tracking. Okay, you've spent a month tracking the key activities. Now, let's look at how you can generate insights from this. One, activities, and some key questions that you need to ask yourself in this section. One, what were you doing? What were you doing? Was this a structured or unstructured activity? Did you have a specific role to play? Were you the leader? or were you just a participant? So you pick one of the activities that you listed in the wayfinding, and then you use the AEIOU to extract insight from it. So if, let's say, one of my activities is play music, right? So that is my activity. I was just joking at home, I was playing music, everybody was loving it. That was the activity. Now, the environment. Notice where you were when you were involved in the activity. What kind of place was it? And how did you feel about it? So I was playing music from a Spotify, but I was playing really cool playlists. Everybody was liking it. And that was the environment I found myself. People were there to listen to it. And I was really excited about the kind of music I was selecting and how people were reacting to it. Now, interaction. How were you interacting with people? Sorry, what were you interacting with? Was it people or was it machines? Was it a new kind of interaction, or was it one that you are familiar with? Was it formal or informal? Now, this interaction will also, using the same example as this jockey, would help me know whether I'm using a machine to play the music. That could tell you that this is somebody, or you are kind of person that is flexible or okay with working with software and complicated machines, or you prefer to interact with people. Now, the next one is objects. Were you interacting with an object that's a device, i.e. an iPhone, an iPad or iPhone or smartphone, a sailboat? What object were you interacting with? And what were the objects that created or supported your feeling engaged? So this will also be, when you ask yourself this question, you answer them by listening, by giving the answers, looking at the activity that you performed. And then lastly, the users. Who else was there, and what role did they play in making it either a positive or negative experience? So that is what the wayfinding insight, getting the insights to does. With the wayfinding, you list the activities that you're performing, engage them in terms of engagement and then energy, and then you use the AEIOU tool to help you extract insight into it. What activity were you performing? The environment that you find yourself, what environment was it? The interactions, the objects you're interacting with, and then the users, who were you talking to? And as I mentioned, this will give you ideas into the activities that you're performing and give you more insight into that. Now, once you've gone through the wayfinding, I promise you probably have a lot of ideas going on in your mind, a lot of ideas with things that you think you can pursue. Okay, so I like this. This is something that I got great feedback from the people that I was interacting with. Also, maybe I like technology because, in objects, I was interacting with the software. Now, the next tool to use to be able to help you synthesize all this information and all these thoughts is the mind mapping. So the mind mapping works by using simple free association of words, one after another, to open up the idea space and come up with new solutions. It's a great tool to ideate by yourself. So you pick one theme. So from your activities, now on the right-hand side of this slide, I have selected one activity here, which is being outdoor. Okay, so I select that, just that word, act of the activities that I mentioned in my wayfinding. So being outdoor. And then with the mind mapping, you select words that are associated with what's the word that you are using. So here I'm using being outdoor. What are the words that are associated with it? There's hiking, there's mountain, explorers. And then you keep mapping it. So you have mountain, you map another word to that word that you just wrote. And you keep mapping out the idea and breaking it down. Now, in using the mind map to be able to help you synthesize all this information, there are 3 steps. One is to pick the topic, which I mentioned. You select one topic. Number 2, making the mind map. That's in terms of engagement, energy, and flow, pick out ideas, so words that interact with it. So associated words, but then taking in cognizance of engagement, energy, and flow. And the last point is now try to connect the dots, which is look at words that are associated with each other. It may not be associated in a simple way, but then in a way it can form a certain new career that you may want. So for instance, I like being outdoor, and being outdoor, I circle the word explorer because it stands out for me, and I like bicycles. So do I want to go into bicycle cycling, or do I want to set up a business that helps people scale a mountain, ride a bicycle around those sites? Do I want to go into health and fitness? That is what the mind map example does for you, the tool does for you. Pick up a topic that really interests you. Keep in mind energy, engagement, and flow. and then do the mind map. And lastly, see how you can connect some of the words. And then that will help you to be able to create a certain either career that is already existing or non-existent for you to pursue. Now, going through this process, journey map to help you assess your life, the wayfinding to help you understand what activities you'll be involved in, and then generate insight into why you like those activities or why you don't like those activities. And then you do the mind map. Now, the next step for you is to now use the life design choosing process or framework to help you choose a kind of life that you want to live. Now, there are 4 steps, very easy steps. 1 is to gather and create. So gather as much information as you want. So maybe from the mind map, you picked music, you picked finance. Those were two words that stand out for you. Are you going to be a music, an artist manager? That could be something of a career that you can pursue, because those 2 things are things that really connect with you. You pick them from a mind map. Now, if it is something that you want to pursue, you need to get as much information on whatever you want to pursue, as much information as possible. So become aware of it. Next thing is to prototype. So you get the information, prototype. If you want to decide, if you decide to get into a certain career, you don't necessarily need to go full into it, pay fees, go and get certificates, and then pursue it. You can start it from a small level, which is interacting with people. Find a way to prototype the kind of life that you want. If you want to be an entrepreneur, you can start a small business on the side. Try to understand whether this is something that you want to get into. If you want to become a DJ, try to play music at home. Let people give you feedback. Is this something that's, would be something that you would want to pursue going forward? So gather as much information as possible, prototype, have conversation, get feedback from it. Step 2 is to narrow down. So you may have a lot of options. The key thing is to narrow down to at least 3 to 5 options that you can choose from. Step 3, now choose. Combine your cognitive, emotional, spiritual, intuition, social intelligence to choose something that you want to pursue. And then when you choose it, go head on and go and pursue it. And don't look at the other alternatives. You may have different things that you're running. That is okay. But then if you are pursuing the choice that you have and looking at how you're missing out on other things, you may not find joy in it. So you find the ideas or the kind of path that you want to pursue and you go all out to pursue them. Now, recapping all that we've said here, and because this is a short session, we couldn't go ahead to interact with you to solve or practice some of the things, some of the tools that we were mentioning, the journey map, the wayfinding technique, or the life design choosing framework. So we want to give you an assignment. We want you to use the knowledge and the techniques that you've learned from this session to help you design your life. You can start by drawing out the journey map, look back, reflect, find out what the highs and lows were, what are the key themes that run through it, use the wayfinding technique to synthesize that information and find out what the engagement and energy levels were or are, and then use the life design choosing framework to help you prototype ideas and pursue the kind of life that you want to live. So these are assignments that we have for you. And we may have another session where we'll be more practical into how we're going to use these techniques. And if you've used it, we'll have an opportunity to interact with you and give you feedback on how you use the tool and how it helped you. Now, to conclude, there's this poem that I really like by Mary Oliver titled The Summer Day. And I would read through and then highlight the key parts I want you to take home. So starting, who made the world? Who made a swan and a black bear? Who made the grasshopper? This grasshopper, I mean, the one who has flung herself out of the grass, the one who is eating sugar out of my hand, who is making her jaws back, who is moving her jaws back and forth instead of up and down, who is grazing around with her enormous and complicated eyes. Now she lifts her pale forearms and thoroughly washes her face. Now she snaps her wings open and floats away. I don't know exactly what a prayer is. I do know how to pay attention, how to fall down into the grass, how to kneel in the grass, how to be idle and blessed, how to scroll through the fields, which is what I have been doing all day. Tell me, what else should I have done? Doesn't everyone die at last and too soon? And the most important question I want you to take home from this session is, tell me, what is it you plan to do with your one wild and precious life? So we have one life, and we're supposed to live it. We're supposed to design a life that at the end of it, we'll have no regrets, and it will be full of joy and things that we can look back and be proud of. So what this session was supposed to do, or is doing, is to give you the kind of tools that are going to help you design this life that you want, that brings you joy and fulfillment. And as I mentioned, it's a question that we need to ask ourselves. What do you plan to do with your one wild and precious life? So at this point, we would end here and invite questions and interact with you on these tools and this session and in this knowledge that we shared with you. Thank you. So we invite questions. If you have it, you can either write it in the chat, or you can, you can unmute yourself and ask a question, or you can write it. Comments, feedback, questions. Oh, there's a question here.
Okay, yeah, go ahead, Kevin.
Matthew, I'll come to you. Let's look at this question here, and I'll come to you, Matthew.
Well,
So,
I was just
Brian,
going to read the question, so just go ahead.
Oh, okay, all right. What would you say are the major stakeholders you have had to empathize with as you redesign your life? How did you empathize with them as you made considerations for changes in your life? How did their feedback influence or feed into your major decisions? What would you say are the major stakeholders you have had to empathize with as you redesign your life? I would attempt to answer this question. Brian, you have the opportunity to. I think it will go for both of us, since it's very personal in terms of redesigning our lives. So who are the major stakeholders? I mean, family is one. Because in redesigning your life, for me, in terms of assessing it, you want to look at the people that are immediately around you, to be able to use to generate some feedback, looking retrospectively. So you have your parents, who are the major stakeholders around you. You may have some close friends, some family. If you're working in a place, you want to also get feedback from people, because in the principles we spoke about radical collaboration. You have to be able to talk to these people to get your feedback that can help you to redesign your life. As I said, you have a lot of information, or the next thing is to be able to synthesize it and determine what kind of path you want to do, or what path you want to pursue. In terms of, okay, so how did their feedback influence or feed into your major decisions? So as I mentioned, you want to be able to get as much information as possible from your own self, that's looking back, reflecting, and also listen to this feedback, and then be able to synthesize with this information, because sometimes there are some things that I have done that I was never aware of, or I did it easily, and I maybe took it for granted. And someone say, hey, Kelvin, you know, you play like really nice music, or you do very well in putting decks together. You have very good eye. You have a good idea. you are good with identifying details and all of that. So this feedback is put into that framework, and then you synthesize it to be able to help you design your life that you want. So maybe Brian, you want to touch on it, and then we can look at other questions.
Yeah, for sure. So again, I think I've recently been through this. And at the point where I was pivoting my life, I just got like a scholarship to a really good school abroad and stuff. So, and also I had some new exciting projects coming on at work. So again, from a place I really love to work, having an exciting opportunity to further education. It's a lot of different people who have expectations of you, right? Not to mention parents, and probably even you also having expectations of yourself. Again, for Life by Design, you are the biggest focus when it comes to the process. So I guess what it becomes is just trying to be honest with the people in your life about how much what you want to do means for you, right? So the stakeholders closest to you, potentially those you work with, your family, your partner, if you have kids who are older, who can understand them as well. And also being fair about the fact that even though it might change current circumstances, you feel this is something you want to commit to for the long run. How it would affect it is most likely people are scared of what they've not seen, right? But if you decide to pivot your life, you are probably the only one who can understand the potential direction you want to go into. So you also can't let that fear seep in too much. Otherwise, you would do it a bit too sparingly. And if you do it sparingly, you might not give yourself the best shot at doing it. So although you like to test ideas, have conversations, see what people with experience think, like Kelvin said, you don't have to go and do a doctorate. You can start with a little conference or something. It's also not about doing it too timidly. Otherwise, you would never know if it's potential. So yeah, I would say do have the open conversations, and people would have opinions, but with Life by Design, you are also the center of that process. So it's also about you letting the stakeholders in your life understand the value you think this can bring. And when you can do that too, the support can be very meaningful. So that's what my opinion would be.
Hi, my name is Joanna. I just wanted to come in with an example I had recently because you both touched on designing life. But then from the work perspective, I think recently I had an opportunity to
breaking my heart. Are you here?
Oh, can you hear me?
Go ahead, Donna. Yeah.
Yeah, so I was just trying to chip in an example from a work perspective based on a recent facilitation I did. And from what you were saying, Brian and Kelvin, I think people are scared of what they cannot see or what they do not see. Before I entered into the facilitation room, I had been asking, what does the audience look like? And then what do I expect? But then it happened that I knew that it was persons living with disability or people, persons living with, who are differently abled will be in the room, but I didn't know as to which level. So I remember going into the room and then I noticed that we had visually impaired, we had hard of hearing, we had physically challenged, and I went in with a mindset of, okay, we are going to do a couple of activities, and looking at what I had to do within that process, using the life design framework, I basically had to try and then look at, okay, going through a quick ideation process of what activities I had in mind to do for the room, and then had to now narrow it down and then just go back to choosing, okay, if you do this, one party will be excluded. If you do that, another party will be excluded. So literally trying to narrow it down to what activity or how to facilitate it in a way that it would be in the most inclusive option. And I think this particular framework really, if I had it before I went into the process with the knowledge, that would have made my work so easier. But I totally agree with what she said, that sometimes when you are trying to pivot, because that was actually a pivoting opportunity for me to now look at, okay, it is a challenge based on how I came into the room and how I'm now coming to facilitate this particular process. But that experience literally made me or allow me to pivot in a way that I was able to narrow it down, choose one, and then be able to include everyone in the room. So I think that this particular framework, if we can have it documented, it would definitely help us in different aspects of our lives. I mean, work included and other aspects of life. So I just wanted to chip in that example. Yeah.
That's an awesome example. Thanks for sharing, Joanna. And we're sad we weren't there, but hopefully moving forward, definitely, I'm sure me and Kelvin can work on something so these tools can be more helpful moving forward. And glad you were still able to pivot and use your design thinking guru skills you already have to make it work.
Yeah. Any more questions? Still have some time. Questions from the audience.
Maybe we can take one more. I know Kofi's asking if there can be a workbook from the slides.
Okay, with instructions.
Yeah, I mean, I know for Kelvin's side is relatively documented, so maybe it can be easier to put together, and then we can work on creating more content around the personal journey map for the 3 hours and how that works, because that we kind of had to develop from scratch, applying just what other people's experiences had been who've done it successfully. So sure we can put in more work and come up with a document and a template that people can apply, so that potentially if we do a follow-on session, it can also be something people use and we can look at after on how it's worked out.
Hi, I'm back again with one quick question. So I know that there's a difference with when you have options to choose from as opposed to you being a multi-talented, being in a multi-talented kind of zone. So applying this framework to people who both have the resources, have the options, and also maybe multi-talented, from that point of view, how do you then apply this framework in a way that you are still able to choose and focus on one thing when you know that you could do maybe multiple things? Because I know a couple of people, and sometimes I also think of myself as a multi-talented person, and sometimes I just love that being able to focus, which sometimes I don't do well. So how then will you advise applying this framework to such a person? Yeah.
Good question. So yeah, I think I've watched even a TED talk around that, where they call such people multi-potentialites. So people who have different talents and can do different things. I think even before the session, I was thinking of Idris. Actor, he's a musician.
What you're responsible for.
I think there's someone's unmuted. Yeah, and he does so many other different things. And even myself this year, I recently went to a neighborhood I play and was really exciting. And again, I used to do a few of things in the arts. So I was like, maybe it'll be really nice to act in one of them. So I actually met with the director backstage and I was really excited. But then, you end up finding out too that maybe you don't have all the time in the world. So I think even if you're multi-potentialite or multi-talented, it's about prioritizing what's most meaningful first to you, right? And the whole plan is by doing what's most meaningful, most fulfilling early and being able to do it well, you can probably free up time after your successes to then work on other things that matter a lot. And while you do that thing doesn't mean you commit all your time. You have free time, you have the weekend. If you schedule really well, like I've redeveloped my entire schedule to the point where I have nearly no meetings on Friday. So that for other things I want to do that I also find fulfilling, it can be done, right? So I think as much as you might want to do a lot of things, there's probably something that means a lot to you and something you feel can be the most of a career. And then by being intentional about your schedule, if there are other things, you can find more space for those things. And also by giving yourself time frames to accomplish all your goals, you create space where the other talents you have, you can see how well you did one and then find it easier to move on to others. And it also makes it easier for you to track where your progress is. So that's what I'll say as advice for that. I don't know if Kelvin or anyone wants to chip in.
Yeah, similar feedback. It's about prioritizing what is most important. So think of a life as a jar, and you want to fill in with the big stones, so then you can fill up with the smaller stones, and then you put in the sand to fill it up. So there are many things that you may want to pursue, but fully, if you go through the life design process, you see that on the step 4, you have to fully accept the choice. But before you get to this point with a prototype, you'd have gone through a lot of analysis to be able to decide what you want to do. So by then you can choose something and then pursue it. I remember I was talking to a friend some time ago, and he told me that not everything has to generate into an enterprise. Some can be a hobby. So there are some things that you can pursue at different levels. So this comes the enterprise that I want to put a lot of my efforts in, so I can be able to generate some revenue for myself. Then this is something I do as a hobby because I also have interest in it. So you may have other interests, but where you place them and how you allocate your time and resources to it will help you to choose and then follow up with which one you want to go with. So just have the mindset that you would, at a point, you have to prioritize and then plan your time and then allocate your resources to these other activities that you have and be able to focus on one, and that will help.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right, I'm sure we.
Yes, sorry.
You flash it.
Hello.
Yeah. Oh. So I think someone was also asking about the slides. I'm sure we'll try and share a version of the document with all the tools and everything with you all, especially those of you who want to actually practically try this as well. Again, this one has some personal content. Like, I don't think you want to be seeing my face and stuff in the slides, our company stuff. So we'll do a revised version, and then we would work on sharing that. So again, based on what the reception has been, and you guys can give feedback to DTGH, however you can, we would look into doing a second version of this. So if that's something you guys want to see, you can let us know, and that can be more a practical look at how we've actually implemented these for ourselves. Again, like I said, I myself, I'm doing this. I'm sure some of you have. So we can also get a chance to just talk about our journey so far and what our craziness has led to and trying to redesign our lives, right? So I guess.
Right. Any more questions?
If there are no more questions, I'm sure we can pass to Matt to.
Yeah, Matt or Dr. Gordon, some closing remarks before we can end the session.
Hi, thank you very much, Kelvin and Brian. That was an inspiring one and well educative. So I would call on Dr. Gordon to give us a closing remark. Dr. Gordon.
Yes, Matt. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. Go ahead.
Good evening, everybody, and thank you, Brian and Kelvin. This has been fascinating. You know, when I saw the topic, I was like, yeah, we get an opportunity to as they say, eat your own dog food, right? Apply the concepts that you facilitate to your own life. So it's really good that we can talk about applying design thinking to our lives. And I would encourage everybody to check out the book as well. It has some amazing things in there. More importantly, we're excited that we can have this many people on the call, 34. That really is comforting because we want to, do more design thinking meetups, and we have a number of facilitators lined up to facilitate sessions on topics of their choosing. So again, thank you, Brian and Kelvin, for really setting the bar so high, and I hope that the other facilitators will also have wonderful audience sizes like this, and there would also be a lot of learning in the sessions. So thank you, everybody. We look forward to seeing you for our next meetup. And maybe Matt, you can briefly tell us what topic we're talking about before we go. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much, Dr. Gordon. Looks like I would have to pull that topic up, but I think it's still within designing your life, and I'm pretty sure Kelvin and then Brian are still going to take that. I'm not so sure about trying to pull that up.
I think the next topic is around businesses and actually customers, and mapping out the journey to better understand your customers' needs and how well a company is engaging with your customers, and how this can lead to better retention, better products being designed, and also just better insights for you, right? So yeah, that's also going to be Kelvin and I. So sorry, we'll be doing back to back a little, but after we have the rest of the amazing facilitators and the team coming in. So for that session, people who will be great for you to attend. I mean, for all of you here, it can help you in different aspects of your business, whether you're leading your business or in any department. It's also great for startups, enthusiasts, innovators, and creators, just to get a better understanding of how your product is truly serving a purpose for your consumers, and if it's maximizing the problems they are trying to solve in their lives. So yeah, that's the focus of the next session.
Yeah, thanks, Brian. Thanks for stepping in.
You're welcome.
Okay, so thank you all very much for joining us this evening, and we hope it was very informative and educative, and we look forward to seeing you all next month. Have a good evening.